Terrence, you work with kids every day, and I'm gonna be honest with you. When people say the children are the future, I disagree. They're the now. And so if we're not engaging them and getting them involved in the conversations with solutions, then I think we're losing. Terrence, what are the kids saying? What are you hearing?
Well, let me just say this, man. First of all, our children are brilliant. They're not lazy. They're not dumb. They're not angry. Kids are resentful for the fact that adults have failed to do their job.
Right.
Let's be clear with that.
Right. That's right.
All children can learn. If you put a kid in a safe learning environment, that kid can learn. The pure word of education is derived from the Latin word educare, which means to extract and bring forth potential. If we can alleviate the non-academic barriers for our young people, they can learn, they can flourish. When you look at what happens, I always say the average, being an average student is bad. It'll get you a president like George Bush, which leads us to war. Secondly, I'll say that if you raise their dreams and you raise their aspirations, they then will raise their pants.
Yes. Yes.
But we have to be relentless and unapologetic about our commitment to our young people, first and foremost. And if you don't love young people, please get out of education.
That's
All right.
right. That's right.
All right, Terrence, I'm gonna stay with you, and then we're gonna come back down. I'm a black male, and you know, when I give my son a bath in the morning, he's 4. Every morning is tough because when I have to rinse him off, I tell him to raise his hands. And it hurts because I think about all of the young black men who have to raise their hands for the wrong reasons, and I'm giving them a bath, and I really want to protect them and keep them young forever. And when I think about changing negative stereotypes of black men by revealing mainstream or to mainstream America the historical, the systematic and institutional inequalities that perpetuate and exaggerate these images and narratives associated with these stereotypes, how do we attack that part? How do we start having that at the forefront to say that it's really not us? If you look at history, if you look at systems, if you look at institutions and the way that you see us, we don't have to change your mind. We don't have to apologize for how you see us. Where do we start with that, Terrence? Because I feel strongly about that.
I think we have to really have some real dialogue with our prosecutors and our judges. If 95% of prosecutors are white, 66% of police officers are white, that right there represents institutional racism to me. We have to have people that are culturally proficient in certain areas. You got to know, like Kim said, in order to serve the people, you got to be amongst the people. Oftentimes, we have sentencing guidelines that are different from white boys than it is from black boys. So if you look at the Sanford case, this young man gets 3 months in prison when he raped a girl, whereas Brian Banks gets 5 years. His life is over. I come out and say, oh, I'm so sorry this happened to you. He can't move forward in his life. We got to have some real dialogue with people sitting down, not just having lunch, but our kids interacting. Our kids are mobile. Our kids are on social media. They go into the malls together and the libraries together. We got to have some real conversations about, listen, this person, just because I'm black, I want you to see me as a big black man. But if I comply, I shouldn't die. So there's not a white man in America know what it feels like when them lights are behind you, even though I got my license, my registration, my proof of insurance. At the end of the day, Marlo, we got to say, man, listen, my life has value. I'm a contributing and taxpaying member of society. I raised my kids to be law-abiding. We should not die going to and from the store. We should not die going to and from school. These should be a safe haven for our community. Each and every day. Every day is count day. Don't let the media fool you. Count day is not just October 7th. Every day is count day.
Got it. Just for the record, Brian Banks, that was the young African-American high school player that played football.
Yeah,
that
not
was
the state,
falsely
not
accused of rape and spent 5 years in prison, and he got out because he was able to get the girl to
I gotta say one more thing, Marlo. We talk about OJ. To me, OJ is the Obamas. Our modern day OJ is the first family. Barack Obama will come down in history as the best president in United States history, unequivocally. The way this family has been maligned and ridiculed and talked about, disrespected, unlike any other president in U.S. history. Are you kidding me?
Really?
Calling Miss Obama a gorilla, a monkey? If you don't like Barack Obama, who went to the best schools in America, got the best grades, his wife is smarter than him. You damn sure don't like me.
So, my man, We might need to do a podcast with him after this. So, Judge,
Yes.
coming back to you, we talked about, again, this shift in changing those perceptions and looking at systematic institutional inequalities that perpetuate these negative stereotypes. You know, people talk about systems. They talk about at the top. They talk about the justice system. You've been there. You were at 36th District. You've probably seen it all. Can you just reflect on that for a second and just give us some perspective?
Well, I would hope that we don't look at the systemic racism of our society as being a black problem.
Right.
It is
Everybody.
a problem of both black and white Americans.
That's right.
The concept denies a people a equality. I call them those who are outside. It just so happens those who are outside because of the color of their skin. But it also elevates a person solely on the complexion and color of their skin to a superior status, which is a myth. Both are myths. Inferiority and superiority does not come from one's physical type, complexion, sex, or otherwise. It comes from their intellect, comes from their values, their character. If there's any level of superiority, it's in your behavior toward another human being. So from the standpoint of having it identified solely as something that is only a black problem, loses the ability for a people to recognize that while they have artificially benefited, Shirley talked about the issue of, I guess, the vote on affirmative action, whether that would continue or not. Well, we fail to recognize that for that little brief period that affirmative action existed in this country, maybe about 10 or 15 years or so, that there were over 200 years of affirmative action for whites. You could not get in if you were intellectually or any other way superior to that person who was allowed in because you were black. It was a sign up. You're black, don't even apply. Can't even come in the door. So as a consequence, this generation of many of those persons who were immigrants to our country in the last, say, 2 or 3 generations, they're able to maneuver and raise themselves up in a society based upon their talent, abilities, and also an inclination to have a very favorable opinion of them because of the color of their skin, being white. That's just as artificial as to judge me by the color of my skin because I'm black. So what we have to do, beginning in the very earliest stages of our educational system, in our families and our homes, begin to have that dialogue with our children in our society so that we understand that the level of participation, the level of our working together is not based upon the color of our skin. We don't then build those structural systems that incorporate that into their every aspect of their operation and then tie it to the generations and generations and others till you wake up one day and people have a hatred for another people and they don't even know them. Right. So that's really where we have to begin to look at resolving these kinds of levels. And I applaud New Detroit because they came into existence on that very theme, an urban coalition, bringing all those voices together. Their board consists of people from the community, people from business, people from education, people from the media, all of these people have a dialogue.
Dialogue.
And that's really where we can make some changes.
Dialogue. And so, really quickly, I want to wrap this up with Dr. Peters. You know, again, I want to come back again to this notion of stereotypes, this notion of imagery, and where we can really start coming with some solutions. Where do you think some of the solutions exist? I mean, very tangible.
The whole problem with stereotypes, it gets back to education. You know, I was a classroom teacher in this country for 50 years, and young people are willing to learn about the whole world. Okay, the problem in this society, education has been dominated by the forces of white superiority, okay, and everything that they represent. These white superiority people, I don't mean white people, everyone. Okay? But when you talk about IQ tests, that's BS. Okay? The white men in this country who created IQ tests were virtual Nazis, and they believed in eugenics and so forth. And it doesn't begin to gauge who people are. Okay? So the academic barriers are huge. Okay? In this state, we are currently running from multicultural education. Black studies, Hispanic studies, Native American studies. These are the places where you can get a social equity curriculum. Okay? These are the places where you can study something other than this kind of mindless Donald Trump-like patriotism. Why aren't you wearing a flag lapel? You know, as if that's intellect. Theologically, okay?
So
People
you're saying
call
a diverse
themselves,
range of education.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, people call themselves Christians in this part of the world. Christianity didn't start in Europe, okay? The Christian Bible says there is the human race. Isn't that what Paul said, okay? That all nations of the earth were made out of one blood. So anytime when I taught, I was like, don't be using the term race around me unless we on a track field. Yeah, huh? There is the human race. This notion of color-coded races, okay, with the lightest being the whitest, that is the craziest mess ever thought of. Huh? I mean, it's so comforting to think that all you have to be is born light, and then you're superior. Please.
So
Any fool knows that's not correct. But, so these are the things that are perpetuated, okay, in the media, okay? If you white, you all right. If you yellow, you mellow. If you brown, stick around. If you black, get back. Okay? These things are still perpetuated.
Okay. Dialogue, education. I think Shirley is going to jump in really quickly, and then we're going to switch to Q&A.
Yeah, just one thing about it in terms of stereotype and the narrative. Talk about changing the narrative. Part of the reason there's more than one narrative, and I don't know if you're familiar with BME's Black Male Engagement. I know you know about that. And Travion Short is a brother. He heads it up for all of the United States, and he says the reason there are two narratives. We just heard in this tonight. We heard 6% there are only 6% of African American men in the United States, and almost 50% are in prison. Well, if I ask you, how many African American? What's the percentage of African Americans who graduated from high school? Who knows? In this country. What's the percentage of African American men who went to college? What's the percentage of African American men who've stayed married? That's the kind. We can get more information for ourselves. We can change the narrative by not just listening to what others say, but to do that and do that research for ourselves.
And so, to that point, to wrap up this part, because I agree with that, it's really about telling our stories. For every bad brother that they show on the news, I can find 20 literally on my phone that I talk to every day. And I think telling our own stories, the Travions of the world, Terrence Wheeler, look this brother up. Amazing young men doing good work. Sean Wilson with the Men of Courage. How we start shifting that narrative is telling the stories, and then having our white brothers and sisters and our Asian brothers and sisters and our Latino brothers and sisters helping us to tell that story, but telling theirs with us, right? So it's not isolation.